Michele, hello.
Now we're good. How you doing, Marcelo?
Oh, it's great.
Well, you see, I have to say that there's something quite interesting that I'm experiencing at the moment. I I'm 1982, right? When I grew up, 16, 18 years old in Italy, there wasn't really a sense of what I'm going to do when I grow old, when I grow up. So we never been told, you need to do an internship, you need to learn how to work. And also, those were the early days of internet as well. I mean, it's the tech bubble was there, but 98, 2000, 2001, um, you're just walking around not knowing very much what's going on. I feel as if teenagers today are a little bit more in tune with what's going on around themselves. Although the first version of Greta Thunberg, we got to see her back in 1992. This woman called Suzuki, she was at the time 12 years old, and she went in front of the UN in Rio, and she did a very similar J'accuse speech that Greta did 20 years later. But I think maybe I was just slow. But what I'm trying to say is, I think if you're 16, is try to engage as much as you can with grown-up stuff, because that way you're going to be much faster at getting the results and the targets and the milestones that and the goals that you set for yourself. I wish I've done that. When I was 18, I was much more interested in coding and stuff like that, not really into like learning a job or understanding what responsibilities meant. Uh, so I never done internship. I think I just went to university and straight from university into a job in banking without learning much around what is around myself. Meaning that when I did my first startup, I really had to learn everything, everything in all directions, which is great. My first startup was at the tender age of 30 effectively, the first true startup, something that had a team and so on and so forth. And I had to learn everything, marketing, communication, social media, how to use better Slack and so on and so forth. So if I can give my first piece of advice is, yeah, just try to get as many internship, make sure that they're at least 3 months. It should never be less than that, and try to change from type of internship from 1 year to the other, so you learn as many skill sets as you can. Yeah, and startups are a great place to do an internship, I think.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a bit more about Impakter and the work you're doing, leveraging all this information out there? Because data is the new oil, right? So you're right there in that market.
Data is in your oil. I focus on sustainability. Therefore, my startup is a little bit complex, but if I can make it simple, imagine this. It's a little box that you as a company come in, and if you're rated sustainable, then you can work on a news platform. You can meet people from the UN. You can get a great report on how well you're doing from a sustainable point of view. And finally, if you're making a product that's sustainable, that, I don't know, it's for men, women, and children, you can sell it on our e-commerce. As an individual, if you come to this box, you can learn a lot more about sustainability, not just from individuals, but from experts in the field. So we have anything from directors of NGOs, institutes, UN organizations, even down to Pulitzers, Nobel Prize recipients have written for our publication or are writing right now. And as well, from time to time, we have a politicians or something like that, or European commissioner that writes on the publication. But what you're going to get is data straight from the source. So yeah, data is gold, but it has to be used properly, and it should be there to empower people, to educate them, and give them the tools to take actions. Because I think I think we're running out of time. I'm not the only one that says that. I think every scientist has said it. And I think striking or educating oneself is fantastic and it's phenomenal and should be done. But these are very much a downstream kind of approach, as opposed to an upstream would be taking action. So working for a company that is sustainable or working on an innovation that aims to solve one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Or if you cannot do either of those, you should then try to buy anything that is sustainable. And with the principle of upstream and downstream is that the product that you're buying will not go down the river and up in the ocean and polluting it. So that's why I call it upstream and downstream. But I think this is a critical moment for us to take actions beyond just striking or educating ourselves. To work with and for people that are changing the world for better, but now, not in 50 years down the line.
Yeah, you make me think of traders back in the old days when they would go to stock exchanges and scream from a pit, buy, sell, and all that. And one of the most uh, successful traders in a commodity called green timber
Mm-hmm.
uh, had no idea what he was trading. He thought that green timber was wood painted in green. And green timber basically means it's not ripe yet and it has very specific industry uses. But he was really, really good at understanding, feeling the market, right? So he didn't even have to know what he was doing there
Mm-hmm.
because it was irrelevant for the decision making process. And that makes me jump to a different dimension, which is greenwashing. Like all of those companies are saying, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be labeled green because they can get a ESG deals, they can get access to lots of important people who are going to pat me on the back and give me a little medal, and that makes me a lot of money. But they don't really care about making a lot of money. How do you tell what's greenwashing? People who are not really green, they just want to get the benefits of being seen as being green.
Well, we're living in a moment where we have eco-populism, as I call it. But so a lot of people claim to be green. They say they do it for being green, and so on and so forth. The reality is, data, like you said, is the most important bit. So we have an index for sustainability where we evaluate all companies based on their SDGs compliance, so which is slightly more tougher than ESG. So it looks at a lot of different areas that a company could be green. And the way we look at this is like, well, what is, if you take a big jar and you have 5 glasses in front of you of water and you have to fill this jar, what is the first glass, the big one, what is going to contain? And so what is the first impact? Well, reality, we have a lot of certification out there that actually work. And ISO is a classic one, all the way to other parameters set by GRI, for instance, for agriculture, which is phenomenal. These certificates are the big glass of water that an organization, like Coca-Cola, for instance, should get immediately. And that way, they don't greenwash themselves. They actually and they stick by their claims. You're getting a GRI certificate, you're getting ISO, all the ISO relevant for your type of companies, then you're not greenwashing. The reality is that a lot of companies acquire a lot of certificates that have nothing to do with their industry, and they might have to do with a tiny bit, but for the vast majority of the activity, it's not the case. So, we always look at whenever we have people joining our company, whether they are even an intern, we will train them up on understanding what is a certificate, how they work, what's the importance of it, because that's your bread and butter, and then the rest it's a nice to have or an add-on, so to speak. So we have an actual very, very specific system to evaluate how good you are being compliant or you're doing greenwashing. Um, but I've seen a lot of company much more interested in ESG. environmental social governance criteria to evaluate how sustainable is your company than actually doing the bread and butter. So going to GRI and asking them, or to ISO, what should I get as a certificate, and get on with it. Today we're suffering from that. The reason, Marcello, that you know, is that there are trillions of dollars to play for this. And I think you know, the new 13 to 17 years olds that are coming up, they should think about how to get involved into sustainability, as it is a very serious industry, with an opportunity to create a business or to grow professionally, and effectively to be successful even on a financial matter, as long as you are not greenwashing the company, because that's the death of your career, probably. I don't know if I've answered your question, Marcelo, but that's a little bit my take on it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's along the right lines, because you just need to be quite strict. When people are saying that they're doing something, you go like, great, and I can validate that you are doing that something, but how relevant is it to what you're doing, and what are the second and third degree implications of your actions? So you could say, oh, we have this salmon farm off the coast of some country, and isn't that wonderful? You don't have to go and get wild salmon because we're just farming them. And you go like, yeah, in principle, that sounds great, because it scales, right? You just have more and more giant tanks offshore, not too far, and you can farm the salmons to satisfy market needs, get the prices down, and so on and so forth. And then you ask a question: what are the salmons eating? Then you're
Mm.
feeding them. So you just go and get fish from the ocean, and then you
That,
throw it in a salmon farm. So there are second degree consequences to these
that's
kind of acts.
true. That's true. I mean, recently, for instance, we had this documentary called Sea Piracy,
Yeah, I
um,
saw that.
which in once it has two aspects of it. One, which is the good aspect of raising questions regarding how sustainable is salmon, aquaculture operation in Scotland, I think it was. How sustainable is that, and so on and so forth. Well, the reality is that there are a lot of, so the good thing is that it raised the questions and it raised awareness behind the issue of what we're doing to the oceans at the moment. Um, what that the negative side of this is, again, back to data. That documentary doesn't explain the total picture behind it. So, for instance, the United Nations has been working on this issue since the 1980s. In fact, the hero of the director who did this documentary, Cousteau, I remember, I still have somewhere here in the house, his books regarding aquaculture and how this works and so on, and how much he was for it. Um, United Nations has created a protocol and has implemented a protocol called 177, if I'm correct, um, which it allows you to manage this operation in a very efficient way and in a sustainable way. But the documentary fails to say that these protocols set up by the nations are on projects that are in development. So, like something like a vaccine takes 10 years to 12 years to do. Yet we've done one in 6 months. But in general, it takes that. The reason why is because it's very difficult. Similar is to do aquaculture that is sustainable. You do it on 1 kilometer square of sea, then you do it on 3 and 5 and whatever. Um, if you look at FAO fishing departments, they will tell you how they've reached scalable aquaculture, but they are sustainable, but they've done it over 20 years. This documentary here, again, a young director, is, I don't know, 25, 28. I don't think he's a journalist, because he would have had a lot of trouble not going to the source. In this case, he should have gone to the FAO fishing department, to WRI, and to Earth Institute, and he would have known the full picture. And you would have known that the certificate for wildlife safe what is it? What do you remember, Marcelo, the certificate that they were using? It slips my mind right now. Um,
I prefer not to mention any names because then it gets personal. But yeah, it's being misused, right?
Yeah, they have used in a documentary the certificate. Well, if you look at the data, the certificate did extremely well. It reduced 97% of bycatch just because it got implemented. The question is yes, but these are boats that are coming into ports. Yes, the article from the United Nations 177 says that you can get arrested if you're fishing sharks. The reality is that the documentary in that case just said, you know, guys, this is the reality. There are projects that are working, others are not. But the only thing that you can do is you can go to your local representative and ask that this Article 177 is not just to the limit of the country onto the sea, but effectively military can go beyond that to go and find illegal fishing activities. A little bit like a sea, what's it called? Sea Shepherd does. What Sea Shepherd is doing is what every country should be doing at a massive scale, because Sea Shepherd is just like 3 boats, 4 boats going around the sea. That's not that's nothing. They're great for marketing this principle, but they're not having a true impact. The real impact is us going to our local representative and saying, hey, UN has got this down to the details since 2007. Why not doing something beyond your border with the UN and the blue helmet and so on and making this happen? That should have been the point of that documentary, in my opinion. But that's
Yeah, people need to be aware that Netflix is not news source, right? So they're trying to get clicks, and that's how they sell subscriptions. So that specific documentary, and I have co-produced a film before. I
mm,
have been going to the Cannes Film Festival for the last
mm,
20 years, every single year. So I could claim to understand the industry better than average. And it's not a balanced documentary at all, right? So there
no,
are
but
a
it
couple of
needs
occasions.
clicks, right?
Well,
It,
it tries to polarize to get people to say how horrible and to lead through feelings. Documentaries are supposed to document the truth, so they are supposed to be balanced, and that one definitely wasn't.
no,
So,
no.
what is your opinion in terms of finding that balance and making sure that people can make decisions based on a fair analysis of reality?
Well, okay. So, in my personal opinion, I think there is a need for an editorial board when you have a certain amount of subscribers to a service. So if you are a platform that distributes content that is supposed to educate people, there is a need of a protocol and in this case an editorial board. Like you know, I publish articles every day on my platform. We have an editorial board. Not only that, we have a bunch of experts in the field. Um, when it comes down to something complicated, I also have a network of uh, people that come from UN institutes and so on that I ask them to write on a specific topic when it's too complicated. I will not get somebody who's 25 to do it. I'll get somebody who's 50. Not that I'm saying you're old at all, but you know that has some expertise and years behind the back that they can actually talk about a complex matter. So an editorial board is definitely something that Netflix needs, in my own opinion. Um, to give you a sense, now we've done an AI system, right, that uh, can basically transform any company into a sustainable company because as long as you listen to the helper, this assistant that takes you through it, your company will become sustainable, and this can be your moms and pop shops to a very large corporation. And we just done a, we just got the basically the UN approved this tool, and we're going to develop something there along the lines of the industrial skills, but green green skills. Now, who is helping me doing this? I'm 38. I got some skills, but I'm a former banker. I'm not the most skillful person you'll ever meet. But I have someone who's 70 years old that created the protocol of evaluation of UN for their programs. I have the head of our Italian research institutes, the head technologist, who's like probably 60. I haven't asked his age, but I have a bunch of people who are 50, 70 years old that are the scientists that are have built this algorithm since 2018 with me. I told them, I'm an asset manager. I evaluate assets like that. So I went to the former head of evaluation of the UN. I said, this is how we do it. Me and her got together, and then we got more people. And yeah, age is important, protocol is important, and a board that oversees activities, whether it's in the case of Netflix and editorial one or a scientific board, is vital. And I think if you're going to put out data out, you should be sure that it's perfect, or as much perfect as you can. I think the director of Seaspiracy is a young man. It's great what he was trying to achieve. I'm sure he tried to do it with the heart in the right place. Problem is, I think Netflix didn't think it through. They didn't think the damage that it could cause, um, in terms of not having an editorial board that would analyze it and put a few red marks where there were some clear mistakes. Um, some of them are a pretty lousy mistake. I mean, anyone who's doing an essay at school or university knows very well that they need to go to the main source of data to get the facts straight. And in the case of Seaspiracy, they did not even go to the main data point for fishing, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization. So, yeah. Sorry, I took a long way around this, but this is my take on editorial board and how to fix this protocol. Yeah.
Well, this is good. I mean, we should have, like Twitter started recently having the fact check, right? Saying, oh, wait a minute, this may be a yellow, orange, or a red flag, and here's where you can find more information. But it doesn't fit Netflix as a platform. They're just like chewing gum for the eyes, right? You just keep on chewing without really absorbing that much, and you just get influence at the subliminal level, and then you move on because they really want you to watch as many assets as possible so that they can get better deals from the people in their ecosystem.
And this then trickles down to platforms like Instagram and TikTok, which are basically entertainment, but they also feed a ton of fake news.
Oh yes.
There is no limit to it. I don't know. This is where my age starts to show because I'm totally against these. The social networks have destroyed things. They haven't allowed us to share. I mean, in one sense, yeah, they allowed us to share information better. But listen, I use Slack at work, and I make sure that the data that we share in two channels, which we have, is what I read and what I saw, come from top publications. So we also, in our algorithm, luckily enough, we took on and we analyzed over 300 publications globally, and we ranked them all. So we have a ranking system for them, and we make sure that the data that is even shared among us as a team, the 78, is correct. But even then, you might make some mistakes. It's a strange moment right now. You have also Elon Musk, which is a phenomenal entrepreneur, and his Tesla company made a very interesting mistake. They start accepting cryptocurrencies, so bitcoins, as a payment for uh, their cars, but a one transaction from Visa is 1.78 watts, and one transaction from Bitcoin is 650 something thousand watts. So Bitcoin is the most unsustainable way to pay for anything. It's actually not a currency. And yet Tesla started to accept it. Then suddenly they had to backtrack because everybody said, are you actually out of your mind? You're supposed to be a sustainable company, and yet you're accepting Bitcoin. You have people like him that are making these kind of mistakes.
Yeah, I've been in cryptocurrencies since 2013. So I've been following. I mean, I, I've been doing blockchain stuff for so long that I'm now being asked to talk about the history of cryptocurrencies. It makes me feel quite old. You bet. Um, and it was a marketing stunt in an unregulated market, right? So he was basically saying, I bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. This is going to give us a nice bump in the price. I'm going to be trading in a stealth manner so that no one realizes these are our coins being traded once we get to a peak or a bull trap or whatever metric you want to use there. And there's nothing the government can do because it's not regulated.
I
So
understand, but you see, like this doesn't send a good message either. So you're like you should be a leader in sustainability, using bitcoins to pay, accepting bitcoins to pay for your car should not be, should
uh,
not be.
agree, completely agree. But I do think that he's acting as a market manipulator who would go
Oh
to
yeah,
jail
totally,
if he tried to do
absolutely.
that.
Which is even worse than it makes his position even worse than it is, right?
Yeah,
So
but
you have a hero of every, well, not only teenager but a lot of people. He's a hero. He's like the Iron Man, right? So every teenagers and every myself, I saw all the movie franchise,
yeah.
and he's like the new Iron Man. But then now the new Iron Man is on one side using a marketing trick that is not very sustainable. On the other side, is manipulating the financial markets in his own favor. How's that a hero for young generation?
He reached a scale where it doesn't matter anymore. And if he can have $1.5 billion in Bitcoin being worth 5 billion with a tweet, I guess $4.5 billion is a pretty nice compensation for tarnishing his reputation, which has never been sterling anyway. He is a maverick. He is a guy who's always doing things differently. But what he's doing is deeply damaging. So I believe that it was one of his activist investors who told him, "You have to retract this." Right? It was someone who had power to cause him pain, and not many people today have that kind of power. Right? So it was really someone inside saying, "I would not stand for this, and you have to backtrack." And then he came up with his lame excuse saying, "If it's 50% is okay. So if it's only 300,000 times more, that's okay for whom, right?" And he's not necessarily going to cease to have this level of influence, but I do believe regulation should be coming soon.
Mm.
But that's a very long conversation. So it would be great to
Well,
keep in touch. Grazie mille for your time.
I,
Congratulations on the work you're doing. And hope we'll meet in person soon. I don't know when or where, but no, I hope that's on the cards.
I,